Hi. So, film photography is a topic that's getting more and more popular for good reason. And it's not only popular amongst photographers, but also in the general public. One of the things that I had a hard time with when I started in my journey of film photography was where to get started. There wasn't a video or a resource that really walked me through from start to finish how to get started. And so as I've thought more and more about my journey as a film photographer, I thought I'd make this video to provide a resource for those of you who are looking into getting started and really just cover three main categories. The first one being what cameras to start with that are affordable. The second being what film stocks to also start with. And then the last thing being, how do you process the film rolls that you actually shoot? Where do you send them off to? What do you do with the rolls once they come out of your camera? And then how do you get those final images? So that's really what I want to cover in today's video. All right, so let's talk about the first category, and that's cameras. What cameras do I recommend that you buy? I actually suggest anyone that asks me to start with point and shoot cameras, and there's a few reasons why. The first reason being that typically they're the most affordable. That's not always true, but for the most part, it is true. The next reason is they're fully automatic. So whether you're a photographer who knows how to operate a camera, or you're just someone who is getting into film photography for fun, it's nice to have a camera that does everything for you so that you're not worrying so much about the exposure, but you're focused just on composition. So that's another great reason why I think that point and shoots are great. Another awesome reason is, to my understanding, all point and shoot cameras have a built-in flash. So when you are in a scene that's darker or at night, hanging out with friends or family, you're still able to take those photos with your camera because it has a flash built into it. And then what's nice about 35mm with a lot of point and shoots is, although you're supposed to get 36 frames on a roll, a lot of times you can actually squeeze out 37, 38, or even 39, which means that every roll that you put through it, you're actually getting a few extra photos. So that's another nice benefit of point and shoots. And where can you buy these cameras? I honestly recommend, if you have a thrift shop next to you, that's probably the best place to check out first, because it doesn't matter what point and shoot camera it is. When you're first starting out, you just want to get one that works. And if you like it and you want to go further into it, then you can search on eBay or do a Google search and find a store online that sells them. But generally speaking, if you can find a thrift shop that has film cameras, that's a great place to start. All right, so the next thing we need to talk about are film stocks. Once you have a camera, you actually need film to put through it. And so there's two categories. There's black and white, and then there's color. With black and white, my recommendation always is actually Ilford HP5. The reason being is it's cheap. Not just for black and white film, but for film in general. It's a very affordable film stock. And so with black and white, I think it's a great place to start. The other reason why I'm talking about black and white period is, when you first get a camera, you want to make sure it works. And so rather than putting color film through it, that is a little more expensive, I always try to put black and white first through it to make sure everything's working properly. And so that's my recommendation for black and white. With color, there's a lot of options, but over my 2 years of shooting film now, my recommendation are these film stocks. So the first one is Kodak Gold 200, Kodak Ultramax 400, and then there's a few other peripheral ones that I like as well. Some of them being Ektar 100, Pro Image 100, and even Portra 160. So all these film stocks are great. There is a caveat though. Right now at this very moment, film is getting more expensive, and some of the stocks I just mentioned are actually hard to find at a good price. So specifically Kodak Gold 200 and Ultramax 400 are actually really hard to get right now. There's a very high demand and low supply. And so although I love those film stocks, especially for point and shoots, they're hard to come by right now. So in replacement of those, I'd suggest some of the other ones I mentioned. Ektar 100 is a wonderful film stock, as well as Pro Image 100. So the one thing you're noticing with all these film stocks is that I'm mentioning numbers after them. And what those numbers signify are basically the ISO of that film. So the higher the number is, the greater that film is able to expose in low light. So what you're gonna find, generally speaking, is When you have film stocks that are higher number, it's going to be more expensive. That's why you've probably noticed at this point that a lot of the film stocks I just talked about are 100, 160, 200, lower numbers, because they're typically more affordable, because they're meant for daylight use. Again, generally speaking. So those are the film stocks that I recommend. What I would do is maybe not go on Amazon and buy them, but if you can do a general Google search, find an online store that sells them. If you can buy a bulk with a couple friends, that's gonna be a little cheaper for you, so you can cover shipping together. But those are some of the film stocks that I would suggest getting into first before you move on to more expensive ones like Portra 400, 800, Fuji Pro 400H. It's a lot of beautiful ones, but they are a little more expensive. So that's the second thing. It's really just kind of figuring out what film stock to start with that's affordable. All right, so this is the last part of this entire process. And actually, I found it to be the most confusing when I first started. But what do you do with all of the film that you've just shot through your camera? You're sitting on all this film now, so what do you do with it afterwards? The next step is to process your film. And when you think about processing your film, there are two main steps. The first one being developing your film, and then the second being scanning. So with developing, what you want to do, ideally locally if possible, but if not, you're gonna have to mail your film. But you want to find a lab that will develop your film for you. So they're gonna take your film, they'll do the developing on your behalf. And then the second step is scanning. So what you want to do, if you can find the lab that does both, is find a lab that will scan your photos. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna take that developed negative, they're gonna scan it using whatever scanner they use in-house, and then that's gonna produce a digital image for you. So if they offer it, what you wanna get is a TIFF file. It's basically an uncompressed, high quality digital image. And so when you receive that back from them, you can either keep it as is and post that and share that and print that, or you can take that and edit it a little bit. So those are the two main components of processing your film: is one, getting it developed, and then two, scanning. I found this to be really confusing when I first started film photography, trying to figure out where to send it to, what to do with those files. But if you can find a lab, again, that's local, and that can offer both of those services, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. And it makes that process on the back end of shooting film much more enjoyable, because you're thinking less about where to send things and what to do with the logistical portions of it, and you can just get your film back. All right, so let's quickly review the three main categories of getting into film photography. The first one being finding a film camera. My suggestion is a point and shoot. The second one being choosing your film stocks. I mentioned a lot of great ones. And then the last step is processing your film. Finding a lab that will both develop and scan is ideal. And that's kind of the entire process from start to finish of getting into film photography and then getting your final images back. I hope this video is helpful. It's a video that I wish I came across when I first got into film photography. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or any video ideas that you'd like to see around film photography. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Bye.